Welcome back to The Laura Show. I have an amazing guest with me today, Emily O'Brien, who is the founder of Comeback Snacks. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
It's interesting. When I decided I wanted to start a podcast, I really had the intention of having on women who I thought either were doing something really interesting professionally, like they're entrepreneurs or they have like a great career journey. Or B, the thinking was that I wanted someone on the show who had just a really cool story. Something kind of neat to tell, stories that you don't hear all the time. And it's kind of funny because you fit both of those, you check both of those boxes for sure, because you have one of the most interesting stories I've ever heard. And we met back in 2019, and I would remember after you left and after hearing the story, I was in complete awe. And now you've been up to even more. And so I appreciate you coming on because I know you're going to give a lot of value today. And because I know a little bit of your story, I'm actually kind of going to take us back.
Okay.
Take us back to like Emily circa childhood or teenager. Like, what were you like as a kid?
I think I'm the same way that I am now, just fun, always adventurous, curious. I was doing sports, learning how to do things, I was part of like the junior naturalist club, and I loved animals and learning about going to the library, and I kind of have that same, I'm still the same way, just older.
Were you kind of, did you have like a lot, were you a social butterfly, like a lot of friends? Did you what was your kind of the group of people you hung out with?
I was actually really introverted when I was young. Because I was at the library all the time, I had friends at school, but I think I had maybe 2 really close friends, but I didn't hang out with big groups of friends until I got to high school, at least. Yeah.
Okay, I feel like maybe high school is probably maybe the turning point for you a little bit.
Yeah.
But correct me if I'm wrong. It's so interesting because I was the complete opposite. You would have never found me at the library unless I was studying. I was a studious kind of kid, but I was definitely the hanging out with friends and throwing all the parties at my house and things like that. High school's kind of funny though, right? Because peer pressure kind of comes into a little bit more play and how you're perceived in front of your group of friends. And tell me about that time in your life. Was that an interesting change for you, like being the introvert and then starting out with new friends?
Yeah, and I also, started drinking and stuff like that because it made me less shy. It's not like I did it to actually rebel on purpose.
How old were you when you started drinking?
13, maybe.
Yeah,
14.
Okay. Me too.
Colt 45, Fireball whiskey,
Yeah. And you're probably an 80s kid?
88,
Yeah. So that was that era, definitely, where I think we all started hitting the bottle pretty early. So as cheap booze as you could get, right?
Yeah.
Did you kind of find you were you drank a little bit and were hanging out with the wrong crowd, or was it a good crowd of kids but we're just doing things that regular teens did?
Yeah, I mean I don't really think any crowd is really the wrong crowd, especially at that age. You're just trying to figure out so much, right? I mean, the right crowd and the wrong crowd was kind of a social construct, right? It was where do your parents live, and what do your parents do for work, and how much money do you have, and then if you partied and you came from a different class or whatever, that would make you good or bad, right? But everyone partied, didn't matter how where you're from, right? So
yeah, I was kind of like that too, because I think back to my time. I definitely was the kid, and this will come back full circle, I'm sure, in a little bit, but I definitely was the kid. I didn't like getting in trouble.
Okay.
I got in trouble one time when I was in grade 1. I was sent to the principal's office for holding snow. And I was so upset that I was in trouble, and I vowed to myself to never get in trouble ever again. And I never went to the principal's office again. I was kind of pretty straight-laced.
Yeah.
Obviously in university though, I did have this kind of need to want to be popular, and I was saying, I used to throw the party, so I would have the kids come to my house, but I was very particular about who I let into my group of friends. Yeah, we were underage drinking, but my parents kind of knew about it, and they were pretty lenient on it.
Yeah.
So I knew I wasn't going to get in trouble from that respect, but I made sure that the people who I surrounded myself with were, I knew wouldn't get me into too much trouble, or they wouldn't, invite the whole school over. It was, I was very kind of particular about who I hung out with. And I guess I'm kind of going down this path with you because, again, I know the story. So
yeah.
we get a little bit older. We're outside of high school now.
Yeah.
And for our viewers and listeners, they don't know that you've been incarcerated, and we're going to talk about this. Because how does a person go from, I'm an introvert, I'm at the library, to suddenly where you ended up? Tell me what happened along that journey.
Yeah, and I think a lot of years passed between them, almost 20 years, right? Like I had my first drink at 13, and I was incarcerated at age 26. Oh, no, but I was arrested at 26, so that's like a big gap in between. So, I definitely went to university, I graduated with honors, but I still had like that, that partying in there too. But I also had like this concept that I call strategic procrastination, where it's like, if I don't need good grades right now, then who cares, right? And so like first year and second year university, I don't know, I think I got like the bare minimum so that I didn't get put on academic sanction. And also the courses weren't that interesting. Like for me.
What did you take? What was your undergrad?
I took international development, but like, in your first 2 years, it's all like anthro and econ. I'm like, this is so boring.
Yeah, like the Psych 101 class that everyone had to take, yeah.
Yeah. So like, but as I kind of progressed through university, I started volunteering for different kinds of organizations and just trying to like build more skills that weren't necessarily part of like my academic curriculum. And so by the time I graduated, I was able to get my grades up to, because I wanted to like eventually be able to do my master's. I don't know, maybe it's just like everyone wanted to do their master's, but I knew that I wanted to just get my grades up there, and I also knew that I could. And by that point, the courses were becoming more like tailored to like what I actually wanted to do. Yeah. So it was easier to focus on them.
We'll go back to the story for a second, but I wanted to cut you off because I was one of those students too who I thought like everyone, if you want to be successful, you got to go down the school route and you got to like go to university, and that's kind of at that time, we're talking like early 2000s, would have been the bare minimum. Like I remember people saying like your undergraduate degree is now like graduating high school.
Yeah.
We were a very like academic focused society at that time.
Yeah.
And so the master's was kind of like your one way of stepping up. Did you guys like, were you always ambitious? Were you like, I want good things for myself? And, and that's why you were going down that route?
Yeah. But I wanted both.
Yeah. I was kind of like that too, right? Like I wanted to party and have fun and have friends and do fun things, but I was still also knowing that in the long run, I had big dreams for myself. I just didn't know where to put my time and energy always, right?
Yeah, no, exact same.
Okay, so bring us back. So now we're done. We're 25, 26, right? Yeah. And tell us the story about how you got caught and how we ended up in this ordeal, I guess.
So after university, I think I was 23 or 24. I actually traveled to Indonesia. I worked abroad, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I was always like, I still drank a lot. But then when I moved back to Toronto, kind of worked a corporate job. And then I ended up starting my own like social media company because people were like, oh, like you're good at telling stories. And I talked to a lot of people that were like, you have like this entrepreneurial trait in you. It's like just sometimes it gets you into trouble, right? It's like always trying to forge your own path, but you can still forge the right path. But I was just sometimes entrepreneurship, you kind of have to break rules or bend rules, and then I think sometimes when you get so frustrated with not being told you can't do something that you just kind of go extreme, all right? And so I was drinking, I started my own business, and I was just going out every night. I was like, this is what I have to do.
Were you going out for work?
Yeah, but for fun too.
Oh, okay.
I had a very lucky, like I kind of created this job that I could go out, be social, tell stories for other people, and also do what I wanted at the same time, which is like going out and then, when you're in Toronto, like that's kind of where the cocaine came in, and cocaine was like vodka at that point in Toronto. It was just, I don't know, it wasn't unusual.
It was like readily accessible.
Yeah, if you're like, oh, let's go to a bump in the bathroom, you're like, okay.
Right.
So, it wasn't like this condemned drug.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And my guess is for you, like if everyone around you is kind of doing it, it just doesn't seem like that big a deal. Just like drinking like in high school. Like everyone's doing it, it's not that big a deal.
And it was fun. Like I liked being able to stay awake till like 4 a.m. and like not be like sloppy drunk, right? So
right. Oh, that's true. Damn.
I'm like a drug shark. I'm like a seller.
I was the opposite. I was the sloppy drunk. So interesting. Okay, carry on.
Anyway, so but then something happened in my family where our family kind of separated, and it was very, very difficult for a lot of us. And I know like it's not uncommon, but it was still really hard for me. And I don't care if people are like, oh, were you old enough? It's like you're never old enough to not feel pain from something. And the fact that sometimes there is like this ageism shame if you're sad about something, that's what made me like hide it more. I was like, okay, like you just have to, kind of just
like,
get through it.
Yeah.
And so eventually like my substance use for fun, at that point I saw it as fun. Then it became like kind of more of a medication, right? And then that's
kind of like a daily occurrence, like.
I would say
and I'm going deep here. I hope you don't mind. I'm just very curious because I think a lot more people struggle with these types of things than we talk about, right? It's still a taboo kind of subject, and we always want to come across like we have our shit together, but sometimes on the back end, we are all individually suffering in our own way, and we all have like our own mechanisms. So that's kind of why I'm going deep on it. Yeah. So we're drinking kind of daily. We're doing drugs daily, and
I'm
know
still high functioning though. We're
yeah. So
functioning
you have
enough.
a company like this is what's kind of interesting because you went from like the studious kind of person to the entrepreneurial kind of gene in you, and it's interesting because I get asked a lot now that I'm a small business owner, like, oh, did you always have that gene? I definitely don't think I did. Maybe some people would say, well, you had traits of it, but I definitely was not like a born bred entrepreneur. I feel like yours was kind of a journey into it as well, right? Like you kind of like you had traits that would make you a good entrepreneur, but you also had traits that would have made you maybe go down more the corporate path.
Yeah.
Why listen to your friends at that time and say, okay, you're right, maybe entrepreneurship is for me, and not kind of do the like your undergraduate degree is so specific. Like you could have gotten a job for the government or done something like that. Like why did you kind of flip the script on yourself?
Because I realized that there wasn't that much creativity in it, and I knew that I was always creative as well, and I liked offering my input. And a lot of these like jobs, they don't really allow that, right? It's more just like, this is the system, this is how we do it, and so go do it. Or they're like, but when you also apply for jobs out of university, it's like, oh, you need 3 years experience. You're like, what am I supposed to do?
Like, how am I getting the experience? You take an admin role, right, at some company, and then that's your kind of way in.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Like, good for you for listening to your gut, because I think oftentimes people say, you know, and we talked about this on my last show, where you've put so much time into something that suddenly now you think, well, I have to follow through on it. Like I have my undergraduate degree in this. I can't start from scratch. I've put time and money into something. What would my parents say if I suddenly like changed careers? And I actually have done that so many times. Like I have an undergraduate degree in nutrition, then I did fashion. I've done all these different things. And so, you know, it's nice to hear from somebody else who was like, you just kind of know in your gut, like when it's not right.
Yeah, right? But you know what's interesting too is like I did want to apply for nutrition at Guelph, and I did want to apply.
That's where I went. Yeah.
Okay, same. So, and I did want to apply for business, but my math wasn't good enough, and my chemistry or whatever, my sciences were in the 80s. So it's like I felt like I wasn't smart enough. And as we go through the story, you'll see that I now work in both those fields.
Yes, it's always funny how it kind of comes full circle. I feel like mine did too. So okay, all right. So we're having fun. We're growing our business. Was the business successful? Your social media company?
Yeah, I mean, like I was busy. So I mean, I didn't really try to grow it. I just like staying busy because I didn't.
Were you a one-man show?
Pretty much, yeah. Like I had photographers and stuff that I hired to help with different kinds of shoots and depending on what we were doing. But yeah.
Wow, that's very ballsy. I like it, especially at that age. Like now I'm kind of like, okay, you know, I'm in my late 30s. I've experienced some things, but you know, going at it on your own is pretty impressive. Okay, so we meet somebody along the lines here. We meet a significant other.
Yeah, like I wouldn't say he's a significant other, but he was definitely significant.
He was another.
Yeah, he was a person that I trusted.
Yeah.
And I actually met him through my work, and we did some business together. And we became, I wouldn't say it was a romantic relationship, but it was just like a relationship that I trusted him.
Okay.
He had like some weird way. Also because he said that I was better like off like not drinking so much, and he was sober. So I was like, okay, maybe like he's got something here. And I knew that I was at that point where I knew it was becoming a problem. Right?
Oh, okay.
So
what made you know it was becoming a problem?
Because I was sad. I wasn't like as motivated as I was when I first started. And
like sad, like when you got up and then you would drink more, and then that kind of like.
I just like wasn't feeling fulfilled, and you know everything became more of a chore and less of an adventure.
Okay, so you felt like he was a positive influence for you at the time. Okay.
Yeah. And so, you know, a couple months go by, and I think I met him in the winter at some point. But anyway, so now it's coming towards the summer, and there are some of the weird things about him, like, you know, some of his checks started bouncing, so I started getting, like, really pissed off.
So first red flag.
Yeah, but I didn't see it. Whatever, you know. Like, you know, I tried to, because he had helped me kind of, I felt like that I owed him that because I was trying to take that step towards modified use or sobriety, whatever it was. So I was like, okay, he's actually really helping me here. And that's why I kind of felt like I owed him, and I wanted to trust him because I trusted he was right. Like he was right about me personally.
Like he put faith and trust in you and saw value in what you were doing, supported you.
Yeah.
And you kind of felt like I owe this person at least the same courtesy of of being understanding.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so some checks start bouncing.
Yep.
But that wasn't a red flag.
No.
We carried on.
No, so then they became like a little bit late, and then he would like just do all these nice things for me, like walk the dog, and he would like he would like always be there when I wanted to talk about things, and he wasn't like one of those guys that was, it's like when you have these like casual relationships, you obviously, most people think, oh, it's just like all about sex or something, and it wasn't even about that at all. So that's why I also trusted him, because I felt like I didn't owe him anything like that, right?
Right.
So it was nice, and
So there's and I use the word friendship like because different relationships usually require some part of friendship. So it sounds like you guys had a good friendship. At least as the base of your relationship.
Yeah, and then so one day he's like, oh, I want to take you on this trip, and I was like, okay, like I kind of really want to get out of here. Then he comes over to my apartment like that day pretty much and asks me, oh, just so you know, like if you want, you can bring drugs back and make all this money. And I was like, what the hell? I don't know if I can swear in here, but
yeah, no, you can.
I was like, what the fuck? Like, I just was so blindsided, and I was so mad because I was like, that I love to travel. My passport was everything to me. Where is this even coming from?
Right.
And so I was like, absolutely not.
Yeah, and I imagine like just from the sounds of you growing up, like you were like, yeah, I dabbled in some drugs, but like we're not smuggling drugs across the border.
Yeah, and I also knew that I was a terrible liar, so.
Fair. So did you say no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I went out that night, and he obviously like knew that I was out, and he's like, you know what? I was so stupid for even asking you that. Like, we're gonna go on this trip. Like, if you're still okay with it, I'd still love to take you on this trip. There'll be none of that like bullshit, whatever. He's like, I feel so bad, and I'm so sorry. And I was like, again, that trust came back in, that courtesy. Okay, and so I was like, okay, as long as you promise. And he's like, yeah. And obviously, looking back, and we all think we would have done things differently, but maybe not, And that's kind of how it went. So I went on this trip with him, and 3 days in, he tells me that we're actually there to bring drugs back. His entire demeanor changed. He didn't hit me or anything like that.
Were you meeting other people while you were there? Like, were you just like relaxing and having a good vacation?
Yeah, relaxing, having a good vacation.
Interesting.
And then, on the third day, he's like, you got to get in the car with me. It's not actually all fun and games. And I was like, oh. And that's when I knew. I was like, like I did this to myself, but maybe I could still weasel my way out of it. And
have you seen White Lotus?
No.
Okay. I bring that up because like I'm just getting vibes of White Lotus because these people are away on vacation, and this couple finds them, like this woman likes this guy, and she's going around with him, and all of a sudden there's all these things that start building up in the story, like these red flags, but she keeps giving him the benefit of the doubt until all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can't give you the benefit of the doubt anymore. So it just kind of reminded me of that.
Is that on like Netflix, or where is it on? Maybe I should watch it.
Maybe. What?
Or maybe not.
HBO? Okay, HBO. I don't even know where I watched these things. Anyways, good show, but that's not really the point. I just think it's something that women tend to do, and I can't speak for men, but I do see it sometimes in myself and in my friends. Like it's always giving the benefit of the doubt, even though when something's kind of like, not right there, right?
Yeah, and I think we all can maybe have like manipulative tactics when we want to. I mean, I think girls can just be as conniving as guys can.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so anyway, the third day in, it was like it just changed, and
so now you're kind of stuck with this person. Are you like, okay, I have to go along with it because I don't know how I'm gonna get home, like he's my ticket, or are you like, all right, this isn't that bad of an idea?
No, I was like mortified at myself, and I was scared, and I was also really mad. And I was like, listen, I'm not gonna be good at this. I really don't want to do it. And then he's like, oh, you'll be fine, you know what I mean? And apparently he owed all these people money, and he'd already given my passport to like these people down there. And then it turns out apparently like they paid for the trip or something like that. Like, I don't even know.
So you kind of felt pigeonholed and trapped a little bit.
Yeah.
So you kind of go along with the plan.
I try to,
yeah.
For the most part. But like on the Friday, that's when, we're suited up with, he has it too. We're dropped off back at the St. Lucia airport, and we're both strapped up with these drugs. And then like the day before, he's like, because I was just kind of freaking out at that point. I was like, listen, there is no getting out of it at this point. And people are like, oh, why don't you call the authorities? Come on. Like, we all know how authorities operate in these kinds of countries. Like, I was all by myself, and there was no way that I was getting home without like doing this. So, and I also like, because if I said something to the wrong person, I could be trapped there, right?
Yeah.
So
you didn't feel safe as it was, so this was kind of the safest of the two
Yeah.
options that you had.
Yeah.
Frig, I'm like sweating just listening to the story because like I think one time I had like a lighter in my backpack. I don't even know if that's allowed on a plane, but I remember being like, oh my God, there's a lighter in my backpack. I'm gonna get like caught, let alone being strapped up with drugs all over me.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're getting strapped up
Yeah.
and you're like, I'm going through this. You must have been just losing your mind though.
Well, then he did one thing that helped me calm down a little bit, because I was like, I can't bring it through customs, like absolutely not. You know, I can't look someone in the eye and pretend like nothing's happening. So he's like, okay, when we get to Pearson, you can take it off, put it in your backpack. And because I always traveled, like I always bring a backpack everywhere I go. And he's like, put them in your backpack, and then I'll take them through security. Like when you have those little forms. I was like, okay, so I felt a bit of relief.
Right.
So kind of on the plane ride, I felt like a little bit of relief, because I was like, okay, at least if we
so
have
these things don't show up through a metal detector. You didn't do the ones where you're standing like this, I guess.
No, like
right?
the body scan.
Yeah, that probably wasn't there at the time. So okay.
Yeah,
gotcha. So you're on the plane. You're on your way back to Pearson.
Yeah, okay. And then we land at Pearson, and I'm ready to go to the bathroom, take it off, and he's like, "Oh, it's too late now." So basically, he never actually planned on taking those drugs.
Right.
He's bait and switched me again, and then that's when I was like so done protecting him. You know, I was like, "Fuck this," and so I tried to still like hide it as best I could, but like at that point I wasn't trying to hide my body language. Like I wasn't gonna cause this big chaotic scene, be like, help me, you know what I mean? Because then like they weren't my drugs.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't know what would happen. So anyway, we go through the first part of security, and then we get both called into secondary, and I'm like, I knew this was gonna happen. And so at the same time, I just answered all the questions.
Why do you think you got called in? Because of your demeanor at the first checkpoint, you think?
Demeanor, and then I guess he had actually been on, I found out later that he'd been doing this trip for multiple times, and he had actually red flagged himself.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we're now at the second checkpoint, and what happens?
They call us both, they separate us, and then they just question, so I can't see him, he can't see me, and I just felt this like sense of relief a little bit, you know, because I was like, oh, thank God. You know what I mean? And then they asked me, you know, Miss O'Brien, like, we're going to do a physical search on you. Is there anything that you want to declare? And then I looked at the floor, and I was like, oh my God, yeah. And then, but I said that in my mind, and then they had to ask me again, because I paused for so long, and then I just said yes. And then so I got arrested, and you know, I wasn't really too sure what was going to happen. I thought I was like, okay, I told him the truth. I'm okay, right? You know, like this is good. I'll explain everything, but obviously learned the long and hard way. But in my place, I call it the easy way, because you know I was alive.
Yeah, that's true. Certainly, lots to be grateful of at all times. But okay, so let me just like dissect it a little bit. So the authorities come in, they take you to jail, but then you would have had to have what, a trial, or like what happens, or do you just like plead guilty and then here's your sentence? How does that work?
Yeah, I knew that because I admitted at the border, like after working with the lawyer, it's like, you already admitted it, and I was like, I know. And the fastest way to just getting this all over with was just to plead guilty, because I knew that like in terms of the law, I did break it.
Yeah.
Right. Again, I wasn't too sure of the sentencing. They're like, oh yeah, prison time's mandatory minimum. And I'm like, oh my God. So in the beginning, it was like a pretty big shock. But then I spent some time being mad.
Yes.
But I also knew that this was like part of my healing and part of owning up to things. And I knew that I could create something good with this situation.
So you kind of took some ownership as soon as possible.
Yeah.
I'm sure you were scared shitless though.
Yeah.
A little.
I was just like annoyed, because I was like, I had to be on house arrest too. So I was like, I love my mom, I love my family, but you know, when you're on house arrest and your family, we've never gone through anything like this before. Like, we don't know, right? Like, is there people watching us? Whatever.
Were you scared to tell your parents because, like, of their disappointment, or?
Well, they had to bail me out of jail, so I had no choice.
Right.
Because the crime was like, it wasn't just like you can call a friend and they'll pick you up.
Yeah.
All right, it's like, this is like an indictable offense, and you're not getting out of here until you get an surety, which is something that you can live with until the court proceedings are finalized. And also they had to put up $50,000 bail. So this doesn't mean like an actual cash, this just means an assets. And then if something happened, if I like ran away or something like that, like then they could come after those assets.
Okay, so I know, I'm sure you've told this story so many times, and so I'm gonna maybe fast forward a little bit. So we're waiting to go to prison now,
yeah.
Right? What was that time period? Between
2.5 years.
2.5 years before you went in?
Yeah, it was long.
So you had to suffer through this knowledge of going to prison and being scared.
Yeah.
And my guess is you learned a lot about prison beforehand, because in my experience, you watch TV, you watch news, you think it's probably like the scariest thing, and you're gonna like get beat up. Like you're
I know,
living
my
in this
mom
little
thought
cell.
that. My mom thought
Do
that.
they like give you like, here's how to prepare for prison? Like, and that's such a naive question, but like I feel like, how would you know what to bring or what to expect? Or do they not tell you anything?
They don't tell you anything, but luckily, like this is when like the good things started happening. Like I still did a lot of volunteering. I was still a member of like startup communities, and I was still allowed to go to work. So because of like the dynamic nature of my job, I was a lot like if you had like worked at one place, you could only go there and back given the conditions. But because my job was so different, I was still able to kind of live my life.
Okay.
Which was good.
And were you off alcohol and drugs now too at that point? Because like you were scared of being watched, or no?
No, I wasn't getting drug tested, so I was like, and when I got arrested, I was so mad that I kind of did even more. And then I was like, I'm tired of feeling this. This is not who I am. I'm capable of so much more. And so it was just kind of like a day.
Were you always like really forthcoming about what was going on in your life, like with your friends, or did you try to hide it?
Oh no,
Were
I
you
tried to hide
embarrassed?
it, right?
Okay.
It's like the whole ageism thing, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's very easy to hide things like that. Like when you go out to like Joey, for example, and everyone there was like crushing drinks all the time, right?
Yeah.
So it's easy just, and like I was always downtown in the finance district, and like.
Yeah, but I mean,
That's
like
like
were you
regular
trying
life.
to hide what was coming up for you?
Oh.
Like were you?
I wasn't
open
actually
about-
allowed to talk about the case. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so now we're preparing to go to prison. Health obviously was something that was important to you. Did you kind of go in with like a mindset of like, I'm gonna take care of myself, or I'm gonna grow and I'm gonna read books? Like, what was the thought process of I'm going to prison for how long? How long was the
4 years.
4 years. So I have some time to kill.
Yeah.
So what were you thinking like going into it? Like, this is how I'm gonna spend my time.
I decided I wasn't going to lose a single day in there. I decided I was going to make every day important and meaningful, and whether it's part of learning or exercise or listening to other people's stories, and I knew that some people were like, write a book, and I was like, for what? Like I just broke the law. I have done nothing to write a book, like you know what I mean? But then as when I got inside prison, I saw like how many people were just like in the same situation as me and just like very misunderstood, and not really having a criminal mindset, and we weren't a bunch of criminal masterminds. We were actually like the lowest hanging fruit on the drug totem pole.
Right.
Or a lot of people there suffered with mental illness, or had been victims of horrific abuse, and that's what I learned is like that's who makes up the prison system. It's not like these kingpins, all right? Very rarely.
Like these evil people. It's like made up of regular people who maybe just made the wrong turn here and there, right? And really needed a second chance. Okay, so you're in prison.
Yeah.
And it wasn't obviously like maximum security by any stretch of the imagination. Do you guys are you in individual cells? Do you have like a kitchen? Like what does it look like?
Yeah, we had so there was about 250 inmates where I was in Kitchener, and so they actually, because I was in medium at first, maximum there's still max there because it's federal. But I was in medium. Everyone goes to medium at first if they're not convicted of murder or like very aggravated assault. And so
you had no other prior things, right?
So I had I think I had a DUI from 2009, but that was like a summary. It wasn't,
Yeah.
So, so I get in there, and you have a little makeshift cottage kind of thing. So I don't want to say cottage because that's like a very
sounds like you're on Lake Muskoka.
It's definitely definitely prison. And you're living.
But you're living like with other people, kind of in a little house.
Yeah.
So you have like a kitchen and stuff.
Yeah.
So is this kind of when the idea, like, tell me how the popcorn thing comes to be, because I know it's called comeback snacks now, but it was originally cons and kernels.
Yeah.
Right? So you're in prison, you're seeing people eating popcorn. What happened?
Just like bonding over stories and, laughing, and also talking about like our insecurities about re-entering the workforce and just how many challenges there were and how hard it was just to do better when you're just told like a piece of shit you are the whole time you're in there. They don't like try to do any like, confidence classes or anything. They just remind you what you did the whole time, and it's very hard to heal. It's not like a very healing centric place, right? It's
So
more
you kind of
punishment.
tried to like use the women around you to like build each other up a little bit, I guess.
Oh yeah, and just like learning about different people. I saw like how many skills everyone else had, whether you're like an artist or a writer, or and in my case a lot of people cooked in there and they love cooking, or a lot of people were mothers. So I was like, there has to be a way to like not just like recalibrate my own life, but also like show people that I and like a lot of people, most people in here too are the exact same as me and capable of so much more, but we also need like help getting there.
When's the light bulb moment for you where you're like, oh, there's a business here, or maybe I should start a new business because now I'm here, I'm not doing my social media business, I imagine. That was
no
now
cell
done,
phones, yeah.
Right, so couldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And was the idea in prison that you got for this snack company?
Yeah, like I was reading a lot of books at that point. Like I think I read 82, and I really wanted to build like a social enterprise, which is like, you have a product and it's for profit, so you can, support your life. That's what entrepreneurship is, right? You're not a charity.
Yeah.
But you also do something good to help the community or like, some sort of group that you work with. And I was like, this was my group, this is my lived experience. And I knew that I had like a lot of potential to work in that space and to help fix things. Because this was also in the time where prison reform was happening, right? It wasn't, 20 years ago, people wouldn't have given a shit. But now because all the movement's happening in the US, I couldn't have gone to prison at a better time.
Right.
Basically to kind of like amplify this or like be, someone that could start it.
You were kind of ahead of the curve, really. I think, like using, well, I'm sure there's other people who have done it too, but like using this experience and like helping the people there. So you guys are making snacks and you're seeing obviously people use different spices and whatever was accessible to them to make them. So in prison, do you start it?
Yeah.
And you started the business in prison?
Yeah. Like
how does that work?
I know.
Like who do you talk to on the outside? Like, your folks,
I talked to one of my friends who is now still my current business partner, and he's like, this is actually a great idea. And it was popcorn, because popcorn is like a universal snack. I wasn't trying to invent a new app that was going to take all this investment and this still takes investment, but like from a raw goods standpoint, I knew popcorn was relatively inexpensive at the time. And it was something that everyone related to, and every kernel popped differently, right? So it was kind of, the way that the kernel pops is kind of like the way that everyone's journey in life is.
And then like all the different seasonings and things, so you can change it kind of like to suit your feelings or your mood or I get the parallel to like we're all unique and individual. That's pretty cool. So you needed money to start this?
Well, in prison
really?
I just needed I started by storytelling, right? So I got my friend to build like a little landing page, and I would write articles about my experience and what I was learning, and then we ended up having like a database of emails. So because a lot of people didn't know that I was actually in prison, and then I decided to tell people that I was in there when I was in there through the means of this website.
Okay, so you're kind of like writing blogs, but you don't have a product yet.
Yeah, no.
But to start the product, like the packaging and stuff like that, like was it a lot of money that we needed or not really? I guess I'm curious, like what do you do? Like I want to start a consumer goods company. And like now what? Like we all have good ideas, but like how do you actually like get the ball rolling?
So the flavors and stuff I kind of worked on in there, like the first flavors, just because we had like certain spices we had access to, and I'd put like Kraft Dinner powder on popcorn, and that's now one of our flavors. It's called triple cheese, but lemon pepper dill, because I wanted to make it started out as a line that I eventually just wanted to be like healthier to help like. Myself in prison, but now it's kind of both, because life's all about choices, so we kind of have both varieties, and and so the logo, like me and my now business partner, we'd sketch designs back and forth through snail mail, and then I would write letters to people, like business people that I've written books, like the books that I read in prison, and if you want to like anyone to open an email, it's hard, but if you want someone to open a letter and it comes from a prison, they're more likely to open it.
That's true. Way to use that to your advantage. I should no. Okay, so that's so interesting. I did a video recently on like how we named our new company from the ground up, and we were originally going to call it Duckface Media. But my point of like that kind of piece of content was to explain like the name doesn't necessarily matter so much.
Yeah,
it's more about getting started. Do you feel the same way about that?
Yeah, and then also like you said, like the cons and kernels, that was the original, because I did a survey and I asked like all the other people that I was sharing the space with, all the inmates, what do you think? And so it was like a kind of a collective decision. Then as I got into the market after prison, I realized that, everyone fucks up in their life, right? So it's not just, I felt like that I was isolating us by calling it that cons and kernels, right? Because then we can expand snack categories, right? So I was like, how do I make this?
So like you start scaling. So now you're out, right?
Yeah.
And now people hear the story.
Yeah.
You've had some great media success.
Yeah.
scaling, was that tough? Because like now we got to bring on people and you haven't necessarily managed other people before.
Yeah.
Right? So what was that experience like? Or how did you decide even?
It was fun because part of it was like all about employment and fair chance employment. So I wanted to hire people that had been incarcerated because I knew that coming out, you know, the second you have to fill out that box, you're like, if you have a record or not, you know, you don't get it. So
where on the flip side for you, that's the prerequisite almost to be working there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're giving other people second chances. Anything that you kind of felt you learned the hard way in the process of growing the business, growing the team, that you would share with maybe other entrepreneurs and say like, don't do it like this?
I think you just have to have you have to learn to be by yourself a lot. I wouldn't say it's lonely because I don't necessarily feel lonely, but you have to learn how to be by yourself and, you know, realize that you are going to be working a lot of hours in a day. And sometimes there is no balance. Like you are extremely off balance. So you can't go into business and entrepreneurship thinking, oh, I'm going to need to have balance, because that's not happening in the beginning. Like,
yeah,
you have to get used to being like kind of everything going like this and handling the bad moments versus the good moments and not being afraid of it, you know?
Interesting. I feel like your background kind of set you up for the success in that because, you know, you've obviously done something that's so scary already. So like running a business, that's nothing compared to probably the fear that you've had before. But for so many people, fear holds them back, right? Fear stops them from saying, hey, I think I got a good idea. Maybe I just need to bring in a business partner, or maybe we should think about scaling it. I know recently you've obviously, you're in a lot of stores. Where can people kind of like find your product? Where do they find everything about? It's because now it's not cons and kernels.
It's comeback snacks.
It's comeback snacks.
Yes.
So where are comeback snacks found?
We're in about 700 stores right now. We also have like an online portal that you can, or like a website you can buy it at comebacksnacks.com. Our locations are there as well. Yeah, and you know, we sell to like little individual stores. So if you're a retail owner, love to work with you. We're in offices and stuff like that too. But for everyone, it's definitely online, and yeah, comebacksnacks.com.
I was doing some research on you. You just last year won the Entrepreneur of the Year award.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How did you is that a Toronto thing, a Canada thing?
It was at the Shangri-La, and it was put on by Mantella Corporation and Suzanne Rogers. So that was really fun.
What's kind of the criteria for winning such an amazing accomplishment?
So you have to have reference letters, people that apply, and then I guess there was like over I think it was 300 applicants. And then,
oh, wow.
And then I was a finalist, and then I ended up getting it.
So 2022, I feel like we've come full circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're at the top of your game, you're being awarded by your peers and by the marketplace, and we're growing the business and it's all getting huge. Do you have other dreams? Like, are we like, we're just scratching the surface? Do you feel you've made it? Where are we at now?
I don't know if I'll ever have like the I made it attitude. I think I have the idea of like I'm making it, and like building is like a part of my ethos, right? Like if I'm not doing something, I'm bored, right? So I don't know like where I'm gonna be. Like I'm definitely gonna be doing something. Whether it's I've always wanted to have my own like fund, like my own venture cap fund, so I can support other people's businesses. And you know, I do work with the federal government now, provincial government just has put out a grant for the Skills Development Fund. So it's for employers to help educate people and put more resources into people that need experience. So for example, people coming out of prison, people that live in vulnerable areas, whatever. So that's awesome. And yeah, just helping to change some laws. But I don't ever want to be an actual politician. I'm a politician in my own way.
Right, in your own way. It's interesting because it does all come full circle, right? You
Yeah.
wanted to go nutrition, now you're in the nutrition goods. You went to school for international development, which is obviously public policy and stuff, and you're in a way giving back. And so it's so interesting because I think a lot of people think their life needs to be linear, and it's like you take all these steps to get exactly to where you want to be. But I think your story, I hope people get from your story, is like life takes you in a lot of different places, and it's like rolling with the punches a little bit, and
punching at the same time.
And punching at the same time, and making the best of like scenarios and like wherever your life is. Like I think people get too married to and romantic about this is my life goal and this is where I'm going to be. But I think it goes to show that you can have a lot of success if you kind of just like lean into where you're at that time.
Yeah.
So congratulations on all the success.
Oh,
I have one last question for you.
Sure.
popcorn related question, because I actually do like popcorn.
Okay.
What kind of popcorn eater are you? Are you like a dig in like all over yourself? Are we hand and individual or one at a time? Like,
I always eat it in bed, so with a popcorn bowl on my chest.
in bed, okay.
I'm a bed popcorn eater.
So, and is it like, are you a messy one?
No.
Is it like no?
No.
So one at a time probably.
I'm like a handful at a time.
Okay, all right. I'm a make the biggest bowl possible and put on one of my favorite shows, but I'm a one at a time.
Oh, okay.
I'm a one at a time kind of gal.
Cool.
So interesting. See, we all have our, even in the popcorn eating realm, there's a thousand ways to do it. So,
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. I saw it on your website that no matter what way you eat popcorn. So I thought, well, what way does Emily eat?
Yeah.
Emily, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your story. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. The honesty, I hope, feeds a lot of our viewers and listeners on just what's possible in their own lives. And so I really appreciate you coming, and I'm so proud that like in these last 3 years, like I knew that girl back then, and now to see what you're doing with the company and the brand, and Comeback Snacks has allowed you to like really scale and open things up into different markets. And I just feel like I feel you're just scratching the surface. So congrats.
Oh, thank you so
much.
much.
Thank you so much for being with me. And to all my viewers and listeners, do your subscribe and your likes and your share with your friends, whatever platform you're listening on, do the thing that you're supposed to do, the notifications. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.